Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be back with you. And we have a really special guest today, Dr. Aimie Apigian. We're going to be talking about the role of trauma, which is so under-recognized and misappreciated, underappreciated in these kind of chronic health issues. It was one of the big game changers in my own life. And I see it again and again in our private clients that when there's trauma, we've got to address that trauma. So we're going to be diving into a lot of that with Dr. Aimie, who's a trauma specialist. So I'm very excited to have her here with us. While people are jumping on, just some of our regular reminders that you can always find us at mastall360.com. If you're not on our email list yet, go over the contact page. You want to jump on that because you're going to get even more special stuff that doesn't go out on our blog or our Facebook Lives. And always our educational reminder that we have to do every week that this is for informational, educational purposes, not here to treat, diagnose, cure, or prevent illness. So always work with your healthcare provider. And some links that you may see here on Facebook may be affiliate links, and that means Mastall 360 may make a very small commission if you purchase through that link. We only recommend products that we really love, we use personally or use in our practice. And that goes to help us with all the free resources we put out, like the Facebook Lives, the newsletter, and the website. So also remember, we're going to do a Q&A at the end. Please keep your questions on topic. If they're off topic, we unfortunately can't get to them here. And if it's too in-depth about a personal health question, Facebook won't be the best place for that. But we'll do as many on-topic questions as we can do. I know people are still joining, but let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Aimie, some of her background. So Dr. Aimie is a double board certified medical physician. She's board certified in both preventative and addiction medicine, and she has a double master's in biochemistry and public health. She is the leading medical expert on stored trauma in the body and in addressing the biology of trauma. So she really specializes in trauma and attachment and addictions. And this stems from, she'll tell us a little bit about this, but her own personal experiences in foster parenting and adopting, and then her own health issues. So in addition to her medical studies, she's also certified in functional medicine. She's done a number of trauma therapy trainings, and she really bridges functional medicine and trauma therapy. She's hosted 2 summits, and she's the founder of a nonprofit called Family Challenge Camps that runs weekend intensives for family with children who have experienced this kind of attachment trauma. And now she's the founder and CEO of Trauma Healing Accelerated. So it's really about empowering adults to improve and accelerate their own healing journey for their best mental and physical health. She has a provider certification course as well. So you have a huge amount of education. And I know you from some of your trauma work, and it was so fun to get to see you in person a few weeks ago. Some of my clients have actually done some of your work and raved about it. And they just came back with such great reports. And I went through one of your courses and loved it, that I wanted to have you on to talk with us about trauma, because we haven't touched on that before at this kind of level. We've just kind of skated the surface. But I know it was a big part of my own healing and continues to be. I think we're always healing from trauma. But you've had your own background here too. How did you get into, you've had all these specialty interests, and then how did you do such a deep dive into trauma?
Yeah, I never saw myself going into trauma. This was the furthest from my radar. And I was as conventional medicine as you can be. I was very much into the sciences. I mean, that's even why I went on to do a master's in biochemistry. Like I loved the science of it. And so it never would have even really come into my awareness and been something that I realized, wow, like this is actually driving the whole human body. This is driving our health. If it had not been for my experience with my son. And so it was actually during those years that I was doing my master's in biochemistry. It was like right in between some medical school things, and decided that I was going to become a foster parent for a time that I had available. And so they placed 2 children with me at the time. And I adopted Miguel, and he was 4 years old when he came to me. obviously had had a lot of trauma in his life. And I thought that he just needed love and stability and he would get better. That was my understanding of trauma. And when that did not work, and he actually just even could not receive my love at all, then I went on this quest to figure out what was going on in that brain of his, and what he needed in order to actually resolve that and be able to rise above that. I didn't want his past to always control his life, control his actions, control his moods. And I saw him headed for a very unhappy life. And so it became my goal to figure out, how can I help him rise above that so that he's no longer being controlled by his past. And then what happened is that the more that I continued on in my medical studies, I realized, Beth, like, wait a second, we are all kind of controlled by our past until we actually know, have the knowledge and tools to address it. This isn't something that's part of our normal society and education, or even in our family structures these days. And so it's something that that becomes a part of who we are. It becomes our personality. It becomes our health issues. And we just accept it because we don't know that, oh my goodness, like, it actually is being driven by my past experiences that have become stored in my biology and have actually changed my biology. And so how do you rise above that when it's changed your biology? And so then that was kind of the next step for me, is figuring out, all right, as adults, now that we figure this piece out, that at least it's contributing to our health symptoms and still our relationships and our career and our personalities and everything about us, how do we rewire that? How do we rise above that and no longer let that drive us, when that's been what has always been the case for us in the past? So that's how I came into trauma. And again, I still kind of chuckle, because that was not me at all. You would have talked to me about trauma and I would have been like, no, not me, not interested. Emotions, nope, not. I go to therapy, absolutely not, never. And so here's been this kind of joke on me, right? For now that this is my work.
Well, also a testament for your love for Miguel, that you would, be able to dive into this at such a deep level, to be able to help him and help your relationship. That touches my heart. And trauma has been an area that I've studied quite a bit, not to the depth that you have, but I knew going along that it was going to be a part of my own healing. And I'd had some early trauma. I'd been kicked in the head by a horse when I was 9, and it was a significant traumatic brain injury, really bad car accident, had made some not good choices and boyfriends. And, these kinds of things stack up. But we live in such a traumatized culture, and we don't have these ways of really recognizing it and healing like many traditional cultures do. Many traditional cultures have these ceremonies and things that they do to help the person reintegrate. And we often talk about trauma as if it's only related to people who've been in severe abuse or with veterans. And I don't think that we even have any semblance of recognition. And I catch myself under recognizing the impacts of the traumas. I had a bad car accident 4 years ago, where I was T-boned and really injured. And, I so underestimated the trauma from that, even though every time I came to an intersection and somebody was coming up to the stoplight, I'm like freezing up like this. And so can you tell us how you define trauma, and what is trauma, and then how does it affect our bodies?
Yeah. And as you're talking and sharing kind of your experiences, like, this is what I would hope that people walk away from this talk with, is understanding that trauma is not something bad. Trauma is a normal part of life. Right? Just like loss, death, like, it is just one of those things that is a normal part of life. And what happens, though, is, like you say, we don't have the methods, we don't have the systems in place to deal with it in a normal, natural way. And so for us, it does, like you say, it starts accumulating. Whereas what would be natural for the human body is just to experience the trauma and process the trauma and move on, right? I mean, I think of that whole book about why zebras don't get ulcers. This is exactly the same situation where in our life, lions come after us, right? There is no one who has a human life experience where lions do not come after you. Now, lions can look like different things in your life, but that is a normal part of life. And it's then what happens is that without our ability to know how to process that, then it gets stuck. And we can't go back to eating and resting and living whole and present and grounded because we're still stuck in the trauma, in the survival. So how trauma is defined is really helped when we look at the actual changes that happen in the biology. And this is something where many people still consider trauma as something psychological, right? That happens in your mind. And it could not be farther from the truth. It is not something that happens, I would say, not only in your mind, it's actually a physiology state that happens in your body. And so when we look at what is the exact physiology, biology change that happens, when we look at that, it becomes really easy to define trauma. And trauma then is anything, for whatever reason, that overwhelmed your biology, overwhelmed your system, overwhelmed you in that moment. And that's going to be different for everybody. So something that is a trauma for one person may just be a stress for another person, because there's so many factors then that go into why that became overwhelming for your system. But we experience that overwhelm on an emotional level. And many people will experience that, that freeze that you talked about, right? Where, a car is coming. And even though I'm not back in that situation, I still feel that trauma response, which is very much a freeze response. But at the end of the day, trauma is defined as anything that overwhelms our system. And so, especially when we talk about, we're going to be talking about mast cells and all of these other biology things, and how that even can contribute to setting someone up for experiencing a trauma, because it brings us closer to that edge of being overwhelmed. But then also trauma, because of the changes that happen in the nervous system, will then contribute to those types of health problems developing. And so then it becomes this vicious cycle that we get into, and we got to figure out how to get out.
Yeah.
So,
and you talked about trauma being a normal part of life. And I think Annie had a question here. And I think many people, again, have these associations that trauma is going to be things like abuse, but trauma can occur from a surgery.
Right.
I know my husband had a colonoscopy, and he's one of the very rare people that the anesthesia doesn't work for fully. So he was unable to respond, but aware during the entire situation. And so that's an example of what can affect it. Or it can be a car accident. We can have emotional traumas from a loss, a grief. There's all kinds of things. What are some other examples of types of traumas?
Yeah, I'm glad you're bringing this up, because when I think of a trauma, I think of it more as an experience rather than as an event. And then that helps us really look at all kinds of things that we really need to consider a trauma because of its effect on the biology. So it's not anything other than, it's not labeling it as bad. It's not labeling it as anything other than, in the moment, it overwhelmed your system's ability to stay feeling like it was manageable. It became unmanageable. And there that is an experience. And so when we even look at someone's childhood, right? There are many circumstances, many people who look back on their childhood and do have events that for them were traumatic. But for many people, it was just kind of like the general experience. There's not a specific event, but it was the experience. And so trauma really is an experience of the body, and one in which we feel so out of control, so helpless, powerless, that it overwhelms us and things feel unmanageable. And so when we're even just talking about childhood, right, there are so many dynamics in that, in those early family dynamics that can create that overwhelm. And for young kids, their line of overwhelm is so much closer to the surface than for an adult who's been through a lot of life and they have some wisdom, they've got other experience to rely on, and they know that, okay, I've been kind of through something like this before, so I think it'll work out. But for kids, their nervous system is not set up for that yet. And so they get overwhelmed with emotional things much faster. They get overwhelmed with even being embarrassed, being ridiculed, being laughed at. They get overwhelmed by a barking dog and no one is there to help support them with that. Things that we look back and we're like, well, that shouldn't be a trauma, but it's not the event itself that was the trauma. It was the experience of that body, of that nervous system in that moment. And did it become something that overwhelmed them, and then that is the definition of a trauma. So
I,
even just looking at adulthood, right? Like, yeah, you can look at a car accident, but then you can look at just like the whole experience of being in a certain workplace or being in a certain relationship or not being in a relationship or whatever it is. But anything that the experience itself starts to feel it's too much. It's too much.
I like how you're defining this as an experience and not an event, because I found that people who may have been in the same event will have different experiences of it. And I've known people who were in the same event, but one person was traumatized and one wasn't. I'm highly sensitive, so I get overwhelmed more easily than people who aren't sensitive, and probably am more prone to developing trauma than somebody who isn't quite so sensitive. And one of my first introductions to thinking about this was reading Eckhart Tolle, and I love the story in here about, he talked about how ducks will just kind of get into it sometimes, and how they have ability to either go into that fight or flight response. They'll either go back at the other duck or they'll just take off, and they get it out of their systems. And I know that Peter Levine really picked up on this, talks about this a lot, and a number of these other really front leaders on trauma. I know you work with this, but what I loved was he said, what happens is we freeze, and then it's getting stuck in our bodies. And what stuck with me was the humor of what he wrote. I believe this was in The Power of Now, and he talked about that the ducks don't go, like 2 days later. Can you believe that duck? Did you see what happened back there? It's not there anymore. But
Right.
we've, in ways, really dampened our responses to manage trauma. And that's part of the healing process. And we're going to talk about what's happening. Can you teach us what's happening in our bodies when we have these situations? And one of my responses is to freeze when I don't know what to do and I'm overwhelmed.
Right.
But I found when I really pull on my resources, and I can either address that event, that experience head on, or if I can shake my body and get it out of my body, I feel so much better. It's a totally different experience.
Yep, absolutely. So when a person is going through an experience, and any experience, there are just 3 states of the nervous system that a person is in, which is helpful so that we can really simplify what's happening and take something like trauma that has been complicated more than what it needs to be, and really be able to simplify it to understand it. So there are 3 states of the nervous system. And what happens is that ideally we are in a state of connection and feeling grounded and very present. We are definitely at our healthiest, and we're starting our day that way. That is the ideal. Very few people actually are at that place now. And then there might be a stress or a threat. And so we go into that place, which is another state of the nervous system, sympathetic state. And that's a very high energy state. And our body, our nervous system in that state is all about figuring out, where are my resources? Who is my support? Where are my exits? What is going on? How big is the threat? And how am I going to face this threat? In the moment that our nervous system, in its assessment, decides that, you know what? I don't think we have what it takes. then it shuts down and it goes into a freeze response. And the freeze response is intended to help us survive. And it does that by conserving our energy rather than wasting our energy doing high energy things like running, like fighting, right? That fight or flight response, when it has already decided, I don't think that we're going to be able to have what it takes to put up a fight and come out on top. And so the freeze response is the third state of the nervous system, and it's where the body goes to conserve energy in order to survive something. And so in order to conserve energy, it really goes into this state of mind, an emotional state, if you will, where it takes on this attitude of, I don't care what happens to me anymore because I don't have the energy to care, right? Do whatever you want. I'm just going to lay here. I'm going to let the world happen, and I'm not going to do anything because I don't have the energy to do anything. I don't have the energy to even care. So that is kind of the classic freeze response. And there's a number of things that are associated with that we don't have time to go into. But what happens is that as more and more, like you and me, where our systems are more sensitive and we go into that freeze response faster, then with more and more experiences in life that bring us to that place of overwhelm, which is also the place of freeze response, then it becomes a pattern that our body goes to without even thinking about it. Like it just becomes our default. And now with even just the smallest amount of stress, and our body's like, oh, we better go into the freeze response. Oh, we better conserve our energy. And our body is literally the one running that decision. And it's not even our mind. In our minds, we can say, oh, okay, I can tackle that. Okay, I have more to do today than what I thought, but I can get this done. Or, oh, wasn't expecting that email, wasn't expecting that phone call, but I can have that conversation. And what happens is that our minds will decide that, but our body is like, nope, we're shutting down. And you can feel the exhaustion, you can feel the heaviness that kind of comes over. And that's how you know, like, this is actually something that's happening in your biology. It's not, trauma is not just in your mind and in your psychology, which is why we really need to drop into our body and not be in our heads, which is where the stories are at, right? Like if ducks were in their head, they would still be talking about that other duck 2 days later, because that's what happens when we're in our head. And that's a safe place for us to be generally. And so in order to help really change these patterns and really start to change these default patterns that we've had to respond to life, we've got to learn how to drop into our body and actually shift these states of our nervous system back into parasympathetic, which again is not something that you're going to be able to do just by changing your thoughts or doing a meditation. Anything that just really is involving the brain and the head and your thoughts is not going to touch the stored trauma that's in the nervous system and in the body.
I really found that to be true too, as I started meditating at 19. And if I could have meditated my way out of it, I was a very good meditator. But one of the things I keep thinking about as you're talking too is that so our audience really deals with a lot of mast cell issues and mold toxicity and Lyme and sensitivities. There's a trauma in that. There's a trauma in being so ill. Yeah. And I really experienced that in my own journey of people, you don't have the support circle. People don't understand. There's a lot of medical traumas that happen with practitioners who get afraid, or for whatever reason, they have their own trauma. So they don't know what to say. And they say all the wrong things like, well, you just want to be sick, which I heard. And I've had people who, and I hear the stories every week of people who are told, well, this is all in your head. You're making this up. You're not really sick. Unfortunately, because there's such a misunderstanding of these chronic issues. And that has a toll after a long period of time. And then on top of all of that, having to deal with something that doesn't have a level of social acceptance. And I've had many people who've also gone through cancer and told me that cancer was easier. then dealing with these mast cell mold toxin sensitivities and Lyme and these challenges. And I just want to put that on the table so people can compassionately hold for themselves just how hard that is, because we don't talk about it enough. And that's one of the things that we try to do here, is to create a container to hold that part of this experience of healing, because it's a huge experience of the healing as well. In this community, we've talked so much about the nervous system. So they're pretty tuned in on what the limbic system is and the vagal nerve is. And we've talked about how essential working on the nervous system is for mast cells, because there are actually mast cells at every nerve ending. And the mast cells have neurotransmitter and neuropeptide receptors. And then the neuronal endings have receptors for the mast cell mediators. So there's this communication loop going on. So in trauma, these nervous system pathways are shifting. This ability to shift to parasympathetic, which is also our heal response. So we've got to be able to rest. We've got to be able to heal. And I remember a period of time, as some of my traumas were surfacing, I felt like a shark. I couldn't sit still. I felt like I had to keep circling. I called it my shark mode. And all that meditation training didn't work. I couldn't even handle being still. And I had such severe pain, and that was part of it. And so can you talk with us about the limbic system and trauma and what's going on here in terms of all of that? And then I'd really like to tie it in with this cell danger response that's going on a biochemical level.
You don't pull punches, Beth. Let's go right there. Let's tackle the big topics here. I love that. And I love that about you. And this is one of the ways in which I really, really respect the work that you're doing, right? Like you really get to the root of things. So, my goodness, there's so much that we can talk about with the limbic system. I think that what I will share with your group around the limbic system is actually the relationship between that and attachment. And not something that I usually talk about, but I'm feeling the calling to speak to that to your group. So we'll go there. And with the limbic system, that limbic system is really the whole development of our subconscious nervous system that runs our body. And all of that limbic system is developed in those childhood years. And it's taking in information from both external and internal environments to figure out, okay, what is this world? What is this life on earth thing? And how do we adapt to that in order to help best survive? And this is where, the amount of touch that we receive, the amount of regulation, and I can come back to that word in a second, the amount of regulation that we receive, the amount of movement, up and down bouncing, swinging, all of these things, which is awesome, go into developing a healthy, secure limbic system or an insecure limbic system. And the interesting thing is that for those who develop, like their limbic system develops in a sense that, I feel insecure, I feel anxious, I don't feel like I can really trust the world, the people, I need to be kind of taking care of myself, or all of these insecurities that can kind of develop, all of that really gets stored in that limbic system. And so definitely makes us even more sensitive to a sense of overwhelm later on in life, because our baseline in our limbic system is one of insecurity, as opposed to someone who's coming out of their childhood with a very secure limbic system, which means like a felt sense of safety in their body. And they are so much further away from that line of overwhelm that they're approaching life and decisions and events very differently. Those people going into the military, for example, if they have this secure type of limbic system, they're not the ones who get PTSD, because their nervous system is there, its default is to be able to see, I've got people who I can trust. I can reach out to people. I have this felt sense in my body that people are naturally going to be willing to help me. Whereas you have someone who's approaching an event like that with an insecure attachment, an insecure wiring, and they're not going to reach out because they're going to have those insecurities of, well, how will they see me? Will they see me as weak? Will they see me as not good enough? Will they actually help me? And then if they don't help me, then I'm going to have to deal with that sense of rejection. And my goodness, I don't know if I can deal with that sense of rejection again. I've had that before in my life, or that sense of abandonment. And so out of fear of rejection, they don't reach out. And so it's just a completely different way that we navigate life based on our core limbic system and how it's wired from very early in life for seeing the world as either a very safe place, safe for me to explore and be curious. And even more importantly, Beth, safe enough for me to make mistakes and it be okay. Whereas someone coming out of childhood with this insecure limbic system and insecure attachment, they don't have that felt sense of safety. So they play small. They hold themselves back from growth. They hold themselves back from opening up, from sharing, from making relationships, from connecting, and definitely from making mistakes, right? Like they hold themselves back because they're afraid of making a mistake. And so these are the types of patterns that develop in our nervous system from early on that, again, we just have come to accept as, this is my personality, this is who I am. And it's like, no, no, that's actually not who you are. You are actually a very brave person. You are actually a very strong person. It's just that your system had to make certain adaptations to your environment, and these were those adaptations that it made.
Yeah.
And it served a purpose, but now it's actually holding you back and contributing to your disease. And so then you take someone, Beth, who has, a mast cell issue or has another chronic illness, gets exposed to mold, and their nervous system, because it's wired in the limbic system with this insecurity, it becomes more sensitive to those types of things. And so their healing journey is longer, is harder than someone whose nervous system is naturally wired for feeling safe and secure in the world, right? That naturally goes into that healing parasympathetic state. And for those of us who have these nervous systems that are wired differently, like we're scrapping, we are desperate, we're putting everything into it, and sometimes barely feeling like we're making progress. And that is part of the trauma of having a medical condition or a medical illness or one of these chronic physical conditions, is that it feels so much more overwhelming because of the amount of effort, energy, and time that we have to put into things in order to get better. And we don't know if we're going to get all the way better. We don't have that sense of, I know that my tomorrow is going to be better. We don't have that sense. And so we reach that and can stay and get stuck in that place of overwhelm. And these physical conditions be one of those kind of straws that break the camel's back, in terms of now, before I just would go into overwhelm occasionally. And now I feel like I'm living there. And that is my ever present moment is in overwhelm.
Yeah, I use that exact metaphor, the straw that breaks the camel's back, a lot with my clients too. Is what we know, and we've talked on here as well about this model cell danger response that was so brilliantly developed by Robert Navio, and how this is what is a big part of what's going on in these complex chronic illnesses. And he mapped all of these, dozens and dozens of chronic illnesses, from different types of autoimmunities, different types of cancers, mast cell activation, and so on, to this kind of common core, which is not a surprise for our audience, being an overwhelming amount of toxins, which can include chemical, mold toxins, metals, an overwhelming amount of pathogens, overwhelming amount of stressor, physical injury, trauma. And we hit this threshold with any combination of those. And then we go through all these biochemical changes. And part of that is we develop more sensitivities, we develop a lot of fatigue. We have all these pathway changes, like issues now with methylation and vitamin D production, and just the dominoes kind of stack. And in the client population I see, over 60% of people have had early childhood traumas in some way or another. It's something I always ask about in the paperwork because I want to know. And I find that that group has more sensitivities. And then I have people who didn't have early childhood traumas, but again, just the hits stacked up and they were too many. And then we start getting these limbic system changes again. And I love the phrase you said, this felt sense of safety in the body. And I've been working on my own trauma for a good 20 years and coming to understand I'll be working on it for as long as I'm alive, most likely. And someone that was really been helpful was asking me, do you ever feel completely, fully safe in my body, in your body? And I had to sit with that for a while. And I was thinking about how used to when I go to restaurants, I always had to sit facing the door. And the only time I could not do that is if my husband was facing the door. So he had the same scenario. And I knew if somebody came in that door at me, he had me, right? But even to be in that constant state subconsciously of, where, like you said, where are the exits? And I was realizing that I just had this continual unease and working with that and getting to a place. I mean, I'd really say this year is the first year I felt deeply safe in my body, which is, but it's almost like the fish in water, and the other fish says, how's the water? And the fish says, what's water? Like, you don't realize you're in that until you get an experience of being out of it. And this is something that I share with my clients a lot, that's what they're looking for with the nervous system work, is this deep sense of safety in their bodies. And I've yet to have somebody with these chronic health issues come through my practice who did have that we have to develop it. So a lot of people are asking, and I know we could talk all kinds about the background of trauma, but so many people want to move forward to, what do we do? How do we shift this? What are the tools? And I think people, from seeing the comments that are coming in and the questions, I think many people appreciate the level of trauma that they've experienced.
Yep. Well, let me start with what you should not do. And I had to learn this the hard way, so I speak from personal experience. And there are standard practices that actually will make things worse for those of us who have our biology that's a more sensitive biology. And whether that's because we have methylation issues or nutrient imbalances, whatever it is, right? There is a biology that will make the nervous system more sensitive and more prone to trauma. And when we have biology like that, we run the risk of doing the wrong thing to address our trauma that actually makes our physical symptoms worse. And part of my story was at one point even being on an autoimmune path, and all of my markers were really high. I was starting to have some joint pains. And of course, I go and see a rheumatologist and they say, well, we can't diagnose you with lupus yet. So when you get the butterfly rash, come back and we'll diagnose you with that then. And I'm like, but isn't there anything that I can do to stop that? And of course, their answer was no. And that's kind of what helped motivate me to go figure all of this out. But being able to see that in my journey, as I recognize that, wait a second, the health symptoms that I am having right now, I know from my work are all related to childhood adverse experiences, even though I have not had adverse childhood experiences. Like, I score really low on the ACE, but something happened in my childhood that gave me that same type of nervous system, and it's now manifesting as physical illnesses and conditions later on in life. And so I know that I need to do some trauma work, and I'm willing to do that in order to get my health back. And I did it wrong though, because what I had been told as a medical physician was, you go to therapy. If you recognize that your patient has had some trauma in their background, hey, you are a fantastic physician if you recognize that and tell them to go to therapy. You are practicing, this integrative, comprehensive model of healthcare, and, pat on the back, congratulations. And what I experienced was that no, when I go to therapy and I talk about things and I try to understand things and I'm trying to resolve things, I'm trying to do things the right way, I'm getting a flare up in my conditions. My gut issues are getting worse. The joints, the energy. Oh my goodness, the energy drains. Right, like I would walk out of therapy and just feel like all of my energy, the little bit that I had, is now drained. And it took me a little while to realize, like, wait a second, this can't be right. This cannot be right. Nowhere else in medicine do we say, hey, go do this, and you should experience worse symptoms and that be okay, and that be what we're telling people to do. And so that kind of really started me on my trauma therapy trainings. And so I did. I went, and as a medical physician, I'm sitting in, somatic experiencing and in the trainings with Dr. Peter Levine, feeling completely out of my place, right? Because here I'm surrounded by counselors and therapists and psychologists, and I'm a medical physician and I'm trying to figure this out. And yet it was so valuable because it allowed me to integrate the two and realize, wait a second, when we have these people who have already presented now with physical health conditions that are in this vicious cycle of trauma, whether what came first, who knows at this point, but they're certainly feeding off of each other at this point. How do we get out of that vicious cycle? And it was this essential sequence for me that came out of that, where it's like, first, we actually do have to not talk about it, but we actually have to just create for ourselves a felt sense of safety in our body. That's actually step one of the essential sequence. And how do we teach people to do that, Beth? Right? Like, this is something where I feel like this should be taught in schools. This should be common knowledge. This isn't something that we need to go to therapy for. This is something that each of us as individuals, especially if we have a family or other people in our life, that we need to be able to not only create that felt sense of safety for ourselves, but then be able to share that and pass that on to those that we're helping in their life. And so that creating that felt sense of safety is one thing that I'm like, all right, how do I help people learn that? And so I've created a whole system, 7 different exercises and movements that work directly with the nervous system. Completely stay out of the story. The story does not matter. What matters is that this is what's showing up in your nervous system, this degree of insecurity and even the freeze response, and kind of chronically living in that overwhelmed state, and taking that and saying, that is where we're going to start. We are going to take that and help you learn, give you the actual skills that you can start creating a true felt sense of safety in your body. And just with that, like the shifts and the transformations that start to happen in people's health, not only their mood and emotions, but their physical health symptoms, because the nervous system is now a little more stable. So that is the first step in this essential sequence that I've worked on creating for people who have physical health and chronic illness conditions. And how do we safely address trauma so that we don't make things worse initially.
And I know we're going to get some questions, so I just want to add to what you were saying about why the therapy can actually be harmful, is because the limbic system doesn't know the difference between you're relaying what happened in the past, and it's actually your limbic system experiences it as reoccurring. And that's why you're getting all these physical symptoms. It's just like you're having that car accident or that medical procedure or whatever. So it's not like there's no place for therapy. It's just when there certainly is a place for the emotional support and these different aspects. But retelling the story, and I found this myself too, retelling the story didn't get me there. And I don't ask my clients to tell me the story. I just need to know enough to know what level are we dealing with. Yep. And then it's about basically what we do naturally as as animals. And what animals do naturally is that they go back to, they shake it off and they re-experience a sense of safety in their bodies, and they're fine. They don't have these residual effects. But societally, if you start shaking your arms and your legs and wiggling around, people are going to look at you funny. So we repress all of that. Is there like, I know we got to get to questions. Is there like a little taste of what you're talking about that we could do together?
Sure, absolutely. I would love that. And this is something where I don't have time to talk about the second step in the sequence, but I'll still have you guys do that. I would want you to get some type of back support for yourself so that your full back is supported. And I'm actually going to grab a pillow so that I can do that.
So I'm going to sit back in my chair here.
Yeah, you can sit back in your chair. I like to create even more. So I put a pillow so I can create as much of the actual contact for my back that feels supportive and comfortable. And then I like as much as possible to bring my feet up. So I've got a pillow. I've got my whole system here, Beth. Of course I do, right? Like
I do. I've got my little foot rest. I've got my back rest.
Yep. So I'm going to put my feet up. And with that, there's a little bit of relaxation with my stomach. And then what we're going to do is what I call a push away. And this is a really good exercise for overwhelm. So these are the types of exercises that I teach in all of the people that I work with. And in fact, I teach them this before we go into the biology, because until I can help stabilize the nervous system in this emotional and trauma component, there's not much work that I'm going to be able to do on the biology piece. So I actually start with this stuff. And then you can bring your hands up and bring them as close to your shoulders as you can. And we're going to do a push away. And by that, I mean that you're going to imagine that there's this really, really heavy, huge boulder rock in front of you. That's what you're going to push away. So it's going to take a lot of muscle. It's going to take a lot of energy, and it's going to be really, really slow.
So if you have hypermobility, don't hurt your joints.
Exactly. And this is something that, I want you to just stay within your limits of what feels safe for your body. So when you're ready, I'm kind of already starting to push my feet into the ground because I've got to push this huge rock away. And I'm pushing myself back into my chair. And now I'm going to start moving my hands. And again, when I say slow, I do mean slow. And you don't need to be thinking about anything in particular. It's just the movement, because movement actually engages the nervous system. The nervous system runs our muscles. And so every time that we move, we are working directly with our nervous system. And so you can go you're going to go all the way out, actually extend, not hyperextend, but extend your arms all the way out. And when you get to the end, I want you to just pause right there. And again, at your own pace, but pause right there. And I get a little bit of a deep spontaneous breath. And then when you're ready, you can just kind of drop your hands in your lap and we just pause. Just pause. And you kind of notice, wow, what's going on in my body? I even have like a little bit of a heart going fast right now. I think it's the nervousness of teaching you all the new exercise that you don't know yet.
That felt empowering to me.
Nice.
I have a choice, and I can make a choice about even I don't want to be in this space. I want to move this past away from me. That was kind of the experience I was getting with it. It felt really good to me. Yeah.
And as you're saying that, like I can feel my belly soften. There's like softening that happens, which for me is a good sign of like, my body feels safe, right? There's this softening rather than like we're on guard, we're contracted, we're protecting ourselves. There's this softening, there's this expansion. So this is one exercise that I do quite frequently. I definitely do it every day as part of what I call my normal somatic routine that I do in the morning, but then even throughout the day, right? Like I'm working and it's just been a lot. Anytime that I have those thoughts of, oh my goodness, this is a lot. It's like, well, time to do a push away, because when we do that push away, it's also like clearing the space for me to be able to breathe, right? It's like lifting that heavy weight off of me. And sometimes I'll push up. It's not always in front. There's a million different variations that I go into in my work, in my courses with people. But this is one very simple technique that we can work directly with our nervous system and experience a felt change in our body without ever having to go into our mind and the story, which is powerful.
I love that. And it's about really coming back into the body, whereas I was
Exactly.
dissociated for so long that I had
That's the
trouble
freeze response.
experiencing the sensation in my feet and my legs. So we have a ton of questions. And you guys, just as a reminder, because I know a lot of people came on later, that we can only do what's on topic. If it's personal health questions, I apologize. We can't get to those on Facebook. But by far the most, the question that people are asking the most is, how can they get more of this? How can they work with you?
Yes, I would absolutely love that. Given my personal health experiences, like I really would love to be able to see other people experience this level of a felt sense of safety in their body. And then I call it side effects, right? The side effects may include you having better control over your health, better digestive system, sleeping better, less jaw tension, less muscle soreness. Like the side effects of this kind of work are all good, I promise you. And so, Beth, I actually do have a 21-day journey where I'm taking people through this essential sequence to safely address stored trauma and teaching them all these kinds of exercises. And that is starting November 1st. So if people are interested, a week from today.
And this has some live components in it. So they get to actually experience you live, which is really nice.
Yes, this is something that I personally teach. Yep. So this is something where they get me and I get to guide them through this journey and work with their system and guide them into doing this safely, right? I even myself and many other people, when we talk about, well, it's time to address that trauma, honey. And it's like, there's the fear, right? There's the panic. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to touch it. It's been so much in the past. It's been painful. And in fact, that's why we don't have a felt sense of safety in our bodies, because there is so much pain. There is so much stuff going on in our body that we don't want to be in our body. Our body has not been a safe place. And so it makes total sense to have dissociated and disconnected, and it's more comfortable to be in our brains and just think about stuff. And yet that's not where the healing is going to happen. That's not where the shifts are going to happen. And in order for us to have a different future outcome, especially in regards to our health outcomes, we need to make these shifts in our nervous system now, so that it can be creating a new path for us in the future.
I love that you timed this to go right before we come into the holidays, because that's often a time that people can get re-traumatized.
Yep.
I did pull your website up here. Suze will put links in for you guys if you want to check this out. I've had some clients who took your programs and just raved about it. And I know we talked about that in the beginning, but some people didn't hear that part. They just really loved your programs and they got so much out of them. And that's why I wanted to have you on to talk to us about trauma. But you can come in and there's a video here you can watch. Just click the link. Our link, you guys always do full disclosure, is an affiliate link, which means Dr. Aimie actually gives a small percentage back to us. Doesn't change your cost, but it helps us keep putting it towards the free Facebook Lives and all of these. If you do you want to go through our link, there's no pressure. We've got some questions here. I'm going to try to hit as many as we can. And I also want to respect your time because I know you've got a busy day. Does this work for physical trauma?
That's a great question. And one of the master classes that I did recently was exactly on that question: is what is this essential sequence that we talk about? Is it right for all types of trauma, or which types of trauma? And what is helpful is when we look back and again, look at the definition of trauma. And there's only one definition of trauma, right? A trauma is something that overwhelmed our system. And so even if that was a physical trauma, uh, a concussion, right? Like I've had a few concussions. Talk about overwhelm, right? The physical trauma overwhelmed the system so much that it went into a concussion. And so anything that leaves a lasting mark on the body, right? Like that overwhelmed that's the system at that time. So trauma is trauma. And certainly anytime that we have a nervous system that's contributing to stress and overwhelm, that is going to prevent us from healing from all kinds of things. And so being able to apply these tools, apply this sequence, being able to safely address um, these how to actually shift the nervous system and change the nervous system is going to be important for everything. And I would say, Beth, like not even trauma, just life, right? Like life and life's experiences. A pandemic, for example, right? Like
Yeah.
you never know what life is going to
We're
bring,
we're living
but
in global trauma right
we
now.
are living in global trauma. Yes. And it's been massive. And you can see the fear. You can see how people have a baseline insecurity that then a pandemic hits and the fear has been overwhelming.
It really has been. Some other questions. And Suze, if you can give them the 21-day journey, she separated that out for everybody. That's what this program that she's talking about is. There is a trauma certification for the practitioners who are on, and there's a link there to that. But someone's asking, Anna's asking, is this all about the limbic system?
No. So when we look at trauma, we look at how the pattern has been wired into the whole nervous system. And so rather than the central nervous system, which more refers to the brain, we talk about the autonomic nervous system, that portion of our nervous system that runs our entire body, runs our breathing, runs our heart beating, runs our kidneys, our liver, our digestive system. And so, yes, even though they're connected, right, the limbic system is very connected to the vagus nerve, they are technically different categories. And so much of this work that I'm teaching is around working with the autonomic nervous system that then informs the limbic system that you're safe, as opposed to what would be called more of like a top-down approach, which would be telling yourself that you're safe and then that trying to inform your body. And that's what does not work. It really does need to be your body and the autonomic nervous system having that felt sense of safety in your body, and that informing your brain and your nervous system, your central nervous system, your limbic system. Hey, we truly are safe.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. A couple other questions here. Do multiple deaths when you're young affect the limbic system? And we know that that's true. Someone's asking, can the trauma response be delayed several months after the event? And we know that that's true. A lot of people asking, how do you do this, which is what you're going to teach, and how to become more secure in limbic wiring. And that's exactly what you're going to teach. I'm trying to make sure that we hit the major questions, and I'll come back in this week and make sure that we get to the others. Any last pieces that you wanted to make sure to share with people?
I would really want to just share that there is so much hope. And when I was going through my health crisis, and it was definitely after also some physical injuries, broke a bone, and that became one thing that overwhelmed my system after having years of accumulated trauma. And then I had a car accident, and that overwhelmed my system, and that was very challenging to pull myself out of that depression and anxiety and fatigue that came on after that car accident. And one of the things that I struggled with the most was just not even knowing if things were going to get better, or if this was my new life. Was this my new normal for the rest of my life? And so the one thing that I would really love to share with people is the hope, right? Like there are so many tools that we have available to us. I do think it is unfortunate that this is not more, has not been more known, has not been more mainstream. So this is something that many people don't know about. They don't know that they can have these tools. They don't know that they have so many things that they can do for themselves. um, a lot of people still think that I've got to go to see someone, I've got to go to do this, I've got to go to that. And especially when someone has physical health issues, has chronic illness, how much more powerful it will be when you have the tools yourself, that in the moment when you start to feel overwhelmed, you can shift that right then and there, and don't need to call and make an appointment for your therapist for a week later. Right? And that's, sometimes a small exaggeration, sometimes not an exaggeration, but we've got to learn, we've got to learn how to shift our own nervous system. And with that comes so much empowerment and so much hope. And so that would be my final words for people, is that the incredible change that can happen in physical health, but also emotional health and mental health, and just, my goodness, right? Like, people talk about craving a sense of belonging, craving a felt sense of safety within themselves, and to be able to know how to do that rather than searching for that, but never really finding that. This is going to be so powerful for you in your life.
And I can just second everything that you've said. And there's no way, without having done this type of trauma work, and I went through one of your courses and loved it. And I would never be here running this practice and
Exactly.
doing
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
It just completely shifted my life and shifted my health. And someone was asking, is this link really established between trauma and mast cell activation syndrome? And there's a whole field of study, which is what I did research in my master's, called psychoneuroendocrinoimmunology. And that's the link. And it is established, and it's been established for 40 years, but it's not widely practiced enough. It's not widely known enough. And we should be looking at our systems this way, in terms of how the nervous system, the immune system, hormone system are all intertwined. If there's an immune dysregulation, there's a nervous system dysregulation. If there's a nervous system dysregulation, there's an immune dysregulation, because you can't separate it out. It's like trying to separate the thumb from the little finger when you're talking about the hand and say, well, these aren't related. And that just doesn't make any sense. We've got the links down to your program. You guys, if you're interested, check it out. I love Dr. Aimie's work. It's been wonderful. And I wanted to close with this just really lovely comment from Rachel. She said, hi from Virginia. I've been taking some of Dr. Aimie's courses and Beth's master classes recently. Have so much respect for both of your work, moving forward in my own health journey, as well as learning tools to incorporate in my work as a healthcare provider. Thank you for taking time out to come. I know you're super busy, and it just means a lot. This is one of the pieces we need to keep talking about and keep working on. And I say in my own clinic that the nervous system work, healing the trauma, is at least 50% of the healing process. So if we draw a pie, when we've got supplements, we've got getting out of toxins, we've got foods, all of that's going to be on this left-hand side. And then this right-hand side is going to be the addressing the nervous system. And for those of us who've had early childhood traumas, it sometimes is a bigger slice even of that pie. We have to do this to heal. And I tried it just doing supplements and just doing foods, and couldn't get there till I brought this in. I've seen that in so many of my clients. So thank you again. I'm super excited about your course coming up November 1st, you all. If you want to join, if somebody watches this after November 1st and they miss the sign up date, will you run another group, or how does this work?
Yes, I will run another group in 2022 and looking at March 2022 probably being the next one. not for sure yet on that. And so they should find a way to get on my newsletter so that they can get those updates. And for those people who are here on this call, I am actually holding a Q&A about the 21-day journey on Thursday. So as long as they are on my newsletter, which they can find on the home page, then they will get the email about that as well if they're not quite sure or have additional questions about the 21-day journey. So
Perfect. We'll put the link in to join your newsletter too.
Exactly. Perfect.
Have a wonderful day. Thank you again. Everybody, remember to keep going. Don't get discouraged. The hope is a huge piece, and it's just the people who keep taking step by step by step. These are all complex cases, but if you keep going, those are the people who get well. So be really gentle with yourselves this week and compassionate. And then maybe we can have you on next year too, and we'll do another level of this.
Sounds good, Beth. I love the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. Have a good week, everybody.